So originally, I just had no plan on reviewing Hellboy The Crooked Man. We saw the trailers. It looked bad. This movie had a advertised very low budget. It was filmed out in like the forest of Bulgaria. It really did feel like a movie that was designed to keep the rights, but I still decided to see it afterwards. And while watching it, I kind of kept thinking about something and it was itching at my brain and I needed to get it out. So what went wrong with Hellboy The Crooked Man? This is a movie made on a $20 million budget, which has been a big advertisement. It skipped a US theatrical release. I believe it premiered in Bulgaria, maybe June or July of earlier this year. Had a San Diego Comic-Con trailer going ignored. It was picked up by Ketchup Entertainment to distribute this movie, which it had a VOD release just a few days ago. And you know what? In trying to approach this review, I was trying to be nice about it. Essentially, I understood that it had been the victim of so many of these circumstances with this VOD release, with having the film on a shoestring budget. So I was trying to give this film the benefit of the doubt of essentially like, okay, what is this film trying to be? And what could this film be with the right scale budget? And right away, I understood what this movie was trying to be. It was trying to move away from the cartoonishness that we saw in the Del Toro version or even in the David Harbour reboot. It was trying to be far more stripped down. It was trying to be more demonic. Like it was essentially kind of playing it as a horror suspense film. And also with this premise of just going to the Appalachians, discovering this mystery and investigating it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a TV show procedural. That is all that this movie is essentially. It is a new demon. Hellboy has to fight it. So that was an approach that actually made sense to me. And it was a genre that felt able to essentially make a smaller scale Hellboy movie with a smaller budget, which horror always does. And then I learned something about this movie that made me doubt everything, which was this movie was made on a $20 million budget. And it looks bad. It's directed poorly. No one really gives a good performance. And it just feels super cheap and lazy. And I'm like, this movie was made on a $20 million budget? Had you asked me, I would have honestly guessed this film had a budget of $2 million. I don't understand where $20 million went for this movie. It makes absolutely no sense, especially when we're talking about the horror genre in particular. You know, when you look at Hellboy, The Golden Army, which costs like $85 million, or even look at the David Harbour movie, which costs $50 million, I understand this idea that then this can be a film that feels like it's shot on a shoestring budget. So it certainly is a much smaller budget than Del Toro or the Harbour film had to work with. However, for horror, $20 million is quite a bit of money. For reference, Blair Witch was made on a $500,000 budget. The films that I actually think this film is probably closest in trying to resemble, which is the Evil Dead Sam Raimi's franchise, the 2013 reboot directed by Fede Alvarez was made on a $17 million budget, and the film that came out a few years ago, Evil Dead Rises, was made on a $19 million budget. The Conjuring was a $20 million budget movie when it came out in 2013. Guess what? All of these movies look significantly better than Hellboy The Crooked Man. So yes, we are talking about it comparatively. For Hellboy, it is a stripped down budget. For the actual aesthetic of horror and not being able to convey horror, they had $20 million. They should have been able to do more. Like, here's some praise. I thought the makeup on Hellboy looked pretty good. I guess that's high praise. I thought that the actor who played Hellboy, he was fine. It's weird. The Hellboy's not really the main character in this movie. It feels like he's almost a side character. There's no real memorable scene of action in this movie with him. There's not really anything memorable in this movie in any of the performances. Adeline Rudolph plays the rookie. She's also fine, like doesn't do much. Jefferson White plays Tom, who's the soldier who meets with Hellboy and goes on this journey to fight the witches. Again, a nothing role. No one really stands out. The one actor I wanted to give just a quick shout out to, and I wouldn't even necessarily say he gives a great performance, it was just a ton of fun to see him, We have Joseph Marcel, who plays a reverend in this movie who goes out to fight the demons with Hellboy. For those who are not aware of who Joseph Marcel is, he is Geoffrey Butler on the show The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He's the butler. Like, I enjoyed seeing him in this movie. Like, I had fun with that. And he is certainly playing this role at the most. Like, he is very lively in this movie, and he's clearly going big in it, and I respected what he was trying to do with it. Nothing else really works with this movie. So you have this $20 million budget that feels completely underutilized, and then you have a director where it's just like, okay, you know what? They clearly just gave this to somebody who doesn't have a vision, who isn't able to really do anything special. Like how much of this is actually his fault? He's probably just a nobody. And then I looked. The film director is Brian Taylor. For those who are not aware of Brian Taylor, he is the co-director on such films as the Crank series with Jason Statham. He directed both. He did the Gerard Butler film Gamer, and he's also directed superhero films in Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. He's worked with budgets. Like, this is not some guy who is allergic to the studio system or doesn't understand it. He's worked in it for decades plus. Thus, it's even more confounding that this movie is as bad and as lazy as it is. I guess it's a good paycheck for him. Obviously, this movie's on a $20 million budget. I'm sure he got paid decently enough to make this movie. It's so uninspired and it's so lazy in every choice. And it's just like, wow, had you given anyone else $20 million to make this film and gotten a few competent stuff and actors and cinematographers, whatever, I get that this gets expensive, but all those films I listed off earlier, they had those elements on a far more tightened budget. And those films look much better than anything in this film does. It's just like, you actually could have done something interesting with $20 million. And that's, I think, the whole thesis, my whole complaint of this movie is the defense of this movie almost seemed to be like, well, you know what? They needed to keep the rights. It gets released by Ketchup, who picks up the movie, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's going straight to VOD. Like, this is really a nothing movie that doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. And there is a demonic possession story at the heart of this movie that has served other films quite well. This could have been exciting. This could have felt new and fresh and a bold take on the Hellboy series that we haven't seen in any of the other movies. But it's not. And that's a disappointment. Not because I thought that this movie was going to be good, but because post-watching it, I'm like, oh, actually, this movie could have been good if $20 million went to literally anyone else interested in this source material. And that's also a bizarre thing to say when the creator of Hellboy, Mike Mignola, quite literally co-wrote this movie. And it's just like, wow, like no one really cared about this movie. Like no one could give this film any love or attention. It's all just so passionless, and it shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't have to be this bad. It shouldn't have to be this bleak of an outlook for a movie like this. There could have been something interesting. From my understanding, The Crooked Man is a beloved limited run within Hellboy, and you made this movie just to make this movie, and good on you. I guess you got to keep the rights, though. I don't even know how that works, because it sounds like some of the studio, all of it fell through, and this movie had to get a VOD. Like, I don't know what else to make of this movie. All I know is it's bad and it's not worth your time, so don't watch it. That's my review of Hellboy, The Crooked Man. 1.5 out of 5 stars for Hellboy, The Crooked Man.